Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this week's class. Tonight, we're continuing to work through business awareness, and we're looking at task 3. Topics tonight will be types of business funding, common features between one type of organization and another, and the difference between manufacturing and service businesses. First topic, types of funding used by businesses. We start with, notice this is a 17-mark task, so a little bit less than half an hour, 20-25 minutes. So plenty of time to complete. You'll see when we get to the sample task, you know, the questions themselves are not necessarily too bad. And now we have listed here 4 different ways in which funds will get into a business. First and foremost, new capital can be brought in by owner or owners. If it's a sole trader, it's obviously an owner. If it's a limited company, then capital comes from shareholders, which is a rather more complex way of bringing money in than just the owner putting some money in the bank. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of each of these in a moment. Second way of funding a business, the expression we always used to use is to plough the profits back in. So retain profit. If a business makes a profit, generally speaking, that's going to result in the availability of cash. Not immediately, there's not a direct link, because you can make a sale, you can record a profit, you've then got to get paid. But if a business makes a profit and chooses not to distribute all of that as dividend to the shareholders, or for the owner not to take it out and spend it on a nice cruise, then the business can use that, and it's a very cheap type of funding. Thirdly, the business can borrow. Typically, you know, a business will go to a bank with an explanation of what it wants the money for, and it will take out a loan, and that might be a fixed term loan where it's agreed that the funding is available for a set number of years. The fourth one, working capital. Managing working capital ensures liquidity by monitoring receivables, payables, stock management, debt management. The top and bottom of that is if you can get your customers to pay you quicker than you pay your suppliers, then there's a little bit of a buffer in between of cash that you have got, that you've received from customers you haven't yet paid out to your suppliers. This is not to be underestimated, because if your name is Tesco, of course I'm guessing we all here go to Tesco, not through choice, we just do. We go to Tesco. If you go to Tesco and you buy a bag, a couple of kilos of carrots, you're going to pay, as far as they're concerned, instantly in cash. It might go on your card, but Tesco get the money straight away. Chances are they won't be paying the farmers who've provided those carrots for a fortnight, 3 weeks, 6 weeks. Could be, could be several weeks before they pay for the stuff that they've already sold to you and me. So in a case like that, you know, a business that sells largely for cash but buys on credit can actually generate a huge amount of working capital just by getting paid earlier than it pays its suppliers. So not to be underestimated. You know, don't fall into the trap of thinking that every business buys, pays, waits, sells, waits, receives. That is kind of the model we assume, but it doesn't have to be. So 4 types of financing, advantages and disadvantages of each. Let's have a bit of a think. Now, if we are persuading shareholders to invest more money into our business, so we are offering shares for sale, there is no guarantee that those shareholders will receive any reward for their investment. If we make a profit, then hopefully we'll pay them a dividend. If our business does very well and it's a publicly listed business, the value of the shares may rise. So those are 2 reasons why people may want to invest. Of course, the downside is we may not make enough profit to be able to afford to pay a dividend. Our business may fail, in which case the shares could lose almost all their value. Some years ago, I think the last time Leeds United Football Club went bust, their shares were trading at 2p or 2.5p, and these were shares that people had paid a couple of quid for, not 2 years earlier. So you can lose everything. So from the point of view of the business, to make shares attractive, generally they will need to offer, they'll need to be seen to be likely to offer a good dividend. People will only buy shares if they are confident that there will be good rewards, and they'll judge that by looking at what sort of dividend the company has paid in the past, what sort of growth it's had. So contrast that with if you have to borrow money. Generally speaking, if money goes in as a loan, and loans can be secured or unsecured. If the loan is secured, that means that, rather like a mortgage on a house, if the loan repayments are not met, the asset can be taken by the bank. So it gives the bank or whoever is lending a degree of confidence that they're reducing their risk. So that means that they will tend to lend cheaper than the sort of return that a shareholder may expect to receive. So a shareholder will only invest if the rewards are likely to be very good. Retained profit obviously is the cheapest form of finance, because if you are living frugally and keeping money in the business and not taking it out and spending it, it's not costing you anything. You're not having to pay interest on it. You're not having to pay charges on it. But of course, it's probably the most difficult one, because you have to make a substantial profit in the first place to be able to do that. The nice thing of capital from the point of view of the business is it's a safe way to borrow for the business, because whereas loans must be paid back, and the bank will cheerfully take away all your fleet of delivery vans, your factory, your machinery, they'll cheerfully take that all away if you default. The shareholders can't do any of that. So when shareholders invest capital from the business point of view, if times are hard, they do not have to pay a dividend. And the shareholders can't say, I've changed my mind about my shares. You know, I want to have some of that machinery in exchange. It's tough. They've got the shares, they can sell them to other people who, if they're publicly traded, who can buy them. But from the point of view of the business, once the money's in, the money's in. So it's a good, safe way to borrow. Working capital, plainly, is going to take a certain amount of skill. But again, that is very cheap money. And it's no coincidence that all of the big retail organizations that take a lot of cash and then take a good long time to pay their suppliers, a lot of them offer their own credit cards, their own banking services, because they've got all that money. So they can use that money to make more money. And this is where the money comes from that enables Tesco to have their own Tesco card. And I don't have any big issue with Tesco. They're just the first one you tend to think of when you think of big shop. I think M&S were about the very first people I can remember who had their own credit card. But hey ho. Now, what do we use funding for? Plainly, we have to pay expenses. Nobody wants to work for a company where the wages are going to be a week late because we're a little bit skint this week. So we have to have cash for our expenses. We need to buy assets. Machinery wears out. Customers may expect us to deliver to them. Our smiling new sales manager may well expect to be provided with a nice car to do his job. So expenses and assets, we should always link funding to a particular use. And that's a general rule. Expenses, we should link to working capital. Whoops. And of course, one that does include a type of loan, which is an overdraft. The idea is that that's temporary money that comes in and out. When we buy assets, in any analysis that we're asked to make of funding needs, we should associate those with a term loan. You know, for example, maybe if it's an asset that will last 10 years, maybe a 10-year loan. So the idea should always be that bank borrowing should be associated with asset purchases and working capital with paying for expenses. And really, bank loan is the only long-term type of borrowing, is a loan. Capital introduced tends to be long-term, because once the shares are in, they're in. It's very rare for shares to be redeemed. But again, profit and working capital, those are really short-term funding, and as with overdraft. So expenses, working capital is all short-term, and assets, term loan, would tend to be long-term. I've known shares be issued to fund assets. Our local football club many years ago periodically would want to buy, this is a little 4th division club, they want to buy a new winger, and they would sometimes issue £5,000 of the shares to try and pay for a new winger. This was a long time ago. So 4 types of funding, and always try to picture what's the money for. You know, it's not like all the funding goes in a pot and it all gets spent. Generally, funding is intended to be used for specific purposes. Right, what's next? Common features of business organizations. Now, organizations take all sorts of forms. There are charities. There are businesses that aim to make a profit. You know, some businesses manufacture, some businesses simply buy and sell. Some businesses don't make anything, or you know, don't deal with products. They deal with a service. The football club I mentioned, you know, what do? They provide entertainment, arguably. So they've all got things in common. For a start, a business organization has got people in it. I suppose almost the very definition of an organization is a thing full of people who do stuff. And people work together. What have those people got in common? This is a very favorite expression that AAT love. Hopefully everybody has the same objective in mind. You know, everybody in a business hopefully is thinking, what can I do today to help my business succeed and keep paying my wages tomorrow? It always worries me. I've got friends in every job you can think of. And some friends who have jobs where they don't really feel that well thought of and that well rewarded. You know, and there may be one mate who spends his days sawing up blocks of fish. And I always worry when people say, "Oh, they're not bothered about us. They don't care about me." I think any business that lets its people feel that actually they're just a consumable is taking a risk. You know, every business should strive to make sure that everybody in the business realizes just how important they are. You know, in that factory where the fish blocks are sawn up, the guy who cleans the place up and keeps it nice is making a vital contribution to you and I not getting poisoned by the stuff they make. Everybody's input counts, and it is everyone. The term goal congruence you may have met. Anybody who's already done a costing unit, management accounting costing, we meet it in that, where there is a danger that businesses can set up a bonus scheme which rewards an individual for something that actually is not in the interest of the company. Goal congruence, that every decision taken should include everybody, that everybody is to benefit. So all departments, fair enough, you would expect all the departments to work towards overall strategy, because the people there are led by people who hopefully are well informed as to what the business is trying to do. So goal congruence, everybody has the same aim in mind. What have we got? Cooperative relationships. Yeah. Let's go back to football again. There's no point in having a football team with 11 centre forwards or 11 left backs, you know, or 11. You don't have left backs anymore. They don't exist. Everybody in a team, in every organisation, just the same. You need people to do one job. Every organisation needs people to plan and organise the finances. Hopefully that's what we're all training to do. Every organisation needs somebody to sell its products. Departments need managers to make sure that everybody knows what their job is. Everybody has a different job to do, and we have structure, coordination. Every organisation of any type needs people who each know what their role is in the organisation, and everybody works together to achieve that. Each individual has responsibility. We all have, well, what do we have? We would tend to have, you know, a job description. That's how we would achieve that. We've all got our targets. And again, what one person has a responsibility for. The HR department's responsible for finding the right people to fill the various roles and to you know, to meet the needs of all the various activities. Salesman's job is to find customers, sell products. Within those roles, we have levels of authority. Some people are very good at sharing the jobs out. Some people are very good at explaining and leading a team of people and pulling them together to get a job done. As a general rule, the longer a person stays with an organisation over time, the greater the seniority they acquire, and more seniority will tend to give authority to do more. Anything that involves a group of people all working together is a team. And it could be, as it says, within one function. So you may have a product development team, or you maybe you are setting up a new retail outlet. So you've got a team that goes in and sets up and kits out and recruits and trains local people to set up a new shop. So a team might be a permanent thing, or it might be something that's just pulled together for one particular project. And within any team, the work is shared out. You know, we're back to not having 11 centre forwards. Each person within the team will bring particular skills and abilities, and they will all share out the different tasks to use individuals' expertise, and also the fact that one person can only do so much. A lot of this is common sense, isn't it? And you will find, I think, in this unit, we find a lot of what's in the unit isn't that technical, it's common sense. But it's good sometimes just to think about what's similar and what's different from one organisation to another. Final part of the analysis for tonight before we look at tasks. depending on what your business does, the things that matter to it would be very different. And also the things that you would measure, to determine how well you're doing. So in a manufacturing business, plainly, inventory is a massive financial cost. So there'll be controls on the amount of inventory. Production information to determine how to meet future plans. Work in progress is really a subset of inventory. And one thing that we do in manufacturing is we need to inspect our product to make sure that it is as good as it is. These are all the things that we would focus our management attention on in a manufacturing business, because ultimately what we are there for is to produce our product, whatever it may be. By contrast, a service business doesn't typically have a product. So what we look at is the efficiency with which we deliver the service. How many rooms can a hotel chambermaid clean in a day? How many people does it take to staff a hotel restaurant? And of course, the big measure, our quality check with service is our customers. Whereas with manufacturing, we will do checks ourselves. With service, we rely a lot more on what the customers say. Although, of course, everybody I think has probably heard of the term of mystery shopper, which is that is a type of quality measure that a lot of service companies use, either by a telephone call or by a visit to a retail premises. Anybody here been in a job where they were mystery shopped? Anybody? Nobody? I was once. That's another story I won't go into. A long time ago. So again, it's good to think about, you know, if your career takes you into a service industry, it's vital to have a picture in your mind of how do we judge how well we're doing. Although, of course, the one thing that is common to both of these, and it kind of linked into the feedback from customers, every business really measures its success on repeat business. If the same customers come back again and again to buy your product or to enjoy your service, then you're doing something right. And if not, then you're not. So what sort of a content can we expect for task 3? Okay. Match the sources of finance with the characteristics that best describe it. So by loan, I think we can take it that we actually mean a bank loan here, not tapping up your Uncle Norman for a couple of thousand. So bank loan, source of long-term funding. All right, no interest is charged. Well, I think we can rule that out for a bank loan. And the provider will have ownership, so that's not a bank loan. A bank loan, careful management is required to control your cash position. That's not a bank loan. Interest is charged. That sounds promising. And repayments in line with the agreement. So I think we have our first link. Share capital. Source of long-term funding, yes. No interest charge, yes. And the provider will have ownership. Well, that's actually true of share capital. I think there's a better answer. Share capital, careful management, no. We've done that one. Source of long-term funding, no interest charge. Holder may receive dividends. And that's the clue, and have limited liability. The shareholder can only lose their share capital. So that's that one. And I think by ownership of the business, I think really we are talking to capital that an owner has brought in himself or herself, which finally leaves working capital. Careful management is required to control the cash position. And this is the situation where we are taking pains wherever possible to match up our payments to suppliers and receipts from customers so that we are not paying out a lot of money and then waiting a lot longer. And also the amount of money tied up in inventory, which has to be paid for often before it's sold. Two characteristics of a service. Not always the same and can vary by customer. Sound reasonable. The trick always is, let's look for the ones that are nonsense and see if we can eliminate. Separability. The service and the business can be identified separately from each other. Inseparability. The service and the business cannot be identified separately from each other. Tangibility. Something, well, we can rule out physical form. And I think we can say that it's always the same and can vary by customer. Separability. Separability. Service and the business can be identified separately. So does a business have to be? I suppose if you are the whatever cleaning company, then it's perceived that you are a cleaning company. You wouldn't really, I don't suppose that you would really employ a company to do a job and then they would send someone else just without your permission. So I think we would say then that the service and the business are perceived as one and the same. I suppose if you signed up to us here at FI and then we sent you a load of other people's books and said, oh yeah, ring these people up if you need a bit of help, I don't suppose that would work terribly well, would it? Well, that's everything we're covering tonight. Not as technical as some of the sessions have been, but it's all part of the big picture of being aware of just how what business is made up of and how it fits into the world. I hope that's been useful to you tonight. At this point, I will stop the recording and say thank you for your attention.